Have you ever made a choice that changed your life before you really knew who you were? Yes, that was me. Standing on parade at 16, boots polished, art racing, believing I was ready for the world. Basic training was intense. Early mornings, block jobs, parade square, long runs, heavy packs, exercise in Otterburn. They were the days that changed my life from a young kid. It stripped me down from the young person I once was and rebuilt me from the ground up into the man I'd become. It taught me obedience, discipline, resilience, and teamwork. But it was also taught me how to deal with emotion and how to switch them off when times got hard. That would come back to haunt me later on in life. Hi everyone, and welcome to Trauma, Training and Transformation, exploring how movement heals the mind. With 1 in 5 adults facing a mental health challenge, movement from CrossFit to yoga offers a powerful path to healing. This podcast shares stories, science, and practices to show how moving your body can rewire your mind, release trauma, and transform your life. Because when we move, we don't just build strength, we reclaim our resilience, heal our past, and step boldly into who we are meant to be. I'm James Alder, and today, in Combat to CrossFit, my road to recovery, I will be sharing my own story from growing up in Wigan, joining the army at 16, serving in Iraq, battling with PTSD, to finding hope through CrossFit in 2019. Share how movement changed my life, what my PhD taught me about why it works. This episode discusses combat and PTSD, so listener discretion is advised. As a young boy, I grew up in Wigan in a working class background, where faith and family were at its centre, a place built on routine, loyalty at work, and a deep sense of duty. It was a close-knit community, everyone knew your name, and everyone supported each other. As a young kid growing up, I was very active, riding my bike to walking to school, playing team sports and playing sports with my friends. Cricket, football, soccer to my North American audience, and rugby. Well, of course, rugby. It's what Wiganers do. Andy Fowle was once quoted recently on a podcast, "Once a Wiganer, always a Wiganer." I used to enjoy listening to stories my uncle used to tell of his time in the army, the places he used to visit, the experiences he learnt. I was hooked. And at 16, I left home for the first time and I joined the army. Didn't truly understand what I was signing up for. I just knew I wanted discipline, direction, and a sense of belonging. Have you ever made a choice that changed your life before you really knew who you were? Yes, that was me. Standing on parade at 16, boots polished, art racing, believing I was ready for the world. Basic training was intense. Early mornings, block jobs, parade square, long runs, heavy packs, exercise in Otterburn. They were the days that changed my life from a young kid. It stripped me down from the young person I once was and rebuilt me from the ground up into the man I'd become. It taught me obedience, discipline, resilience, and teamwork. But it was also taught me how to deal with emotion and how to switch them off when times got hard. That would come back to haunt me later on in life. I joined the army as a young boy. I left training as a young man and joined my regiment, the Queen's Lancashire Regiment. This is where I become a soldier, training for war, patrols, and working together as a team. The runs got longer, the packs got harder. What become friendships became bonds. The bonds would last for a lifetime, and those who'd served in the military know what I refer to. I did multiple tours of Northern Ireland, my first tour being when I was 18. Conflict resolution in hostile situations were new skills I had to learn, and my first tour matured me overnight. After going to Northern Ireland multiple times, I developed as a soldier. I also became a physical training instructor, so I got to combine being a soldier and training soldiers for war, but at the same time enjoying the sports, especially rugby, as I loved. I operated in many countries, one of them being Bosnia. Every tour being different, and then came Iraq. It was relentless. The heat, the noise, the uncertainty. Every day demanded a total focus and emotional control. You couldn't show fear, you couldn't show fatigue. You just kept going. Working at night under the fear of being contacted by sniper fire or IDFs to try and get some sleep during the day were constantly indirect. IDF sirens going off all day. We lost friends over there. I came home, thankfully, physically intact, but something had changed. I knew there was something wrong with me. I couldn't relax. Sleep was broken. And instead of being the happy-go-lucky chap I once was, I was angry all the time. When everyone returned home from Iraq, celebrating, hugging their families, I hid away. I stayed in my room, and if I had to deal with people, I kept myself as far away as I possibly could. The pain I suffered was internal. I tried to deflect that from my family and friends. I used to use physical exercise to try and numb the pain, but when that failed, I dove into my job. First one in, last one out. But then that didn't help. I was angry still, and where I tried to sleep, the noise was deafening. I turned to alcohol, but this was another issue that caused issues in my personal and professional life. After seeking help and advice, I went to see the medical doctor in the army, and in 2013, I was diagnosed with PTSD. It was like carrying an invisible weight that no one else could see. I'd lost a good friend in Northern Ireland through PTSD. He took his own life. At the time, it was difficult to take, but I failed still to acknowledge that PTSD was real. I just hid away, pushed it to the back of my mind. Research by the King Center for Military Health had found that 7% of serving personnel and up to 18% of combat veterans have experienced some form of PTSD. This, compared to the UK adult population of 4%, shows it's quite significant. So when people say it's rare, the truth is, it just isn't. Many just suffer in silence. So if you've ever felt like your past keeps pulling you backwards, you'll understand what I was up against. PTSD was a constant. And in 2013, I was diagnosed with PTSD and I was given medication and counseling. It was given to me to help me through my day and help manage my symptoms, because PTSD had changed everything. I was constantly on hyper alert, scanning everywhere I went. The medication helped me get through the day, but I was still alert from what I was doing. I'd check every room. I'd know the way in and the escape route out. I knew it was in there and if it was safe, because crowds made me feel unsafe. If I could help it, I wouldn't go anywhere. But yet still, I had to deal with the silence when I was alone. Night times were the worst. The noise was the loudest. And when I tried to deal with that, I had to then deal with the anger. I was left alone to deal with those emotions and those symptoms. But before, the army had given me identity, structure, and belonging. I was left without it. I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost my sense of direction. I had no mission, no support team, and no purpose. My symptoms had left me nowhere else to go. However, I knew something had to change. I just didn't know how. I continued taking the medication, and with the support of Combat Stress and Help for Heroes, I got counselling. I left the army in 2015 after serving over 25 years in the British Army. But instead of feeling proud of my accomplishment, I felt guilt, and I left under a cloud. I hid away, ashamed of my service because of what I experienced. Iraq had left that scar on me. I went to university and became a student. Whilst there, I studied and conducted a PhD. I wanted to help myself and fellow veterans suffering with PTSD. And in 2019, just before the pandemic, by accident, I was invited to a CrossFit session in the local CrossFit gym, CrossFit Basin View. I walked into the gym environment. It was loud, sweaty, people throwing barbells around. I was instantly out of my depth. I'd never been into a CrossFit gym before. I was always a normal, typical gym expert, but I felt like it was familiar, the discipline, the structure, the challenge. After several sessions, I got used to being in the environment. Every rep became a release from my tension. Every deadlift, every burpee, who invented burpees were a nightmare, was a way of pouring my anger into movement instead of destruction. For the first time in years, I felt my mind quiet as my body worked. I used to do exercise a lot. I lost the motivation, but CrossFit gave me that back. It made me believe in exercise again. It gave me a new mission, not to fight others, but to rebuild myself. It gave me structure. It reminded me of military life, the daily routines, physical goals, accountability. But this time, I wasn't training for war. I was training for myself. I was training for peace. I still remember my first workout. I was introduced to burpees again, something I'd not missed, but something we used to do a lot in the army. The workout was brutal. I thought I couldn't survive. I can't remember how many burpees I had done, but I was lying on the floor, struggling to get up, gasping, sweating over the floor. I was smiling at the same time, stupidly really, because I'd just proven to myself I could keep going. In the army, it teaches you grit, determination, the desire to push through. And I'd lost that because PTSD had took complete control of my life. I couldn't see the next day. I refused to want to live through the next day. But CrossFit had given me something back. Purpose. Also, being around people was a challenge. I didn't like people. I couldn't trust them. But the community environment in the CrossFit environment helped lessen my hypervigilance. The community, it was real therapy. For years, I'd trust no one, always on edge. But in this CrossFit box, in this gymnasium, I felt at home. I felt at home because people clapped when I finished. They cheered me on when I struggled. They noticed when I didn't show up. They held me accountable. They praised me for success, but praised me also for giving it a go and not giving up, and reminded me the next day, make arrangements to meet to do the next session. So for the first time since leaving the army, I didn't feel like an outsider anymore. I felt part of a family again. I wasn't scanning for threats. I was surrounded by teammates again, friends. I've started to build a bond with fellow athletes that I once had in the military. That's what's so powerful about CrossFit. We heal in connection, not in isolation. We all need a tribe, people who push you, challenge you, and remind you who you are. I've had that in the army. I've had that in the rugby teams I played in, and now I have it in CrossFit. I never thought I'd have it again because PTSD had completely had control of my life, my future, my day, every thought. I'd left the army. I'd lost my identity, but CrossFit helped to rewrite that. They helped me to get hold of something I once had lost, and that is me. I regained my identity. So now I was no longer just a veteran with PTSD. I was a CrossFit athlete. I was a CrossFit athlete with a purpose. I was a coach, a chartered psychologist, a father, a human being still learning and willing to grow. Just remember, failure isn't what defines us. It's fuel to make us become better. Never refuse to grow. Always be willing to learn. The barbell became my therapist. The workouts became meditation. And the community I became part of became my new family and support network. It was this experience that got me to do my PhD and moved me on to my own research, which was an autoethnography of PTSD, recovery through CrossFit. And I found some things completely remarkable. CrossFit facilitated recovery from PTSD by restoring my autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Through structured yet flexible training mechanisms, measurable progress, and a supportive community network, CrossFit enabled the reclaiming of my own control, the building of my own self-efficacy, and the connection with others, something I refused to accept or wish to have in the past. The embodied social and psychological engagement of training transformed trauma responses into an adaptive strength, illustrating how movement can serve both as therapy for myself and also identity reconstruction. This is what this journey for me has been about: reclaiming control, rebuilding belief, and reconnecting with life through movement. Things that I always knew, but lost along the way due to suffering from PTSD. I failed to acknowledge it, but now I was learning again. So here's what I learned. Physical challenges can heal mental wounds. Structure and routine give the mind stability, and community helps to rebuild trust and belonging. Now, you don't have to do CrossFit. You don't have to join a CrossFit gym, but as long as you keep moving, an activity that you enjoy, it could be running, walking, swimming, cycling, boxing, or yoga. It's the movement that matters. Find something that pushes you. Surround yourself with good, friendly people, and make sure it's in a safe environment, an environment that you can go to and build a routine around. Now, looking back, I see the journey from my young days as a 16-year-old recruit searching for purpose, to a veteran battling with PTSD, to now a man rebuilding through movement. I'm not over PTSD. I live with it every day still. And CrossFit didn't erase my past. It gave me a new way to fight, not against enemies, but for my own well-being. As I said, I'm not over PTSD, and I know this is only the beginning. I will get there. Perseverance, one step at a time, and trust in the process. Now, in future episodes, we'll explore trauma, training, and psychological intersect from the science of the nervous system to the power of belonging. Now, if this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Also, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen to your podcasts from. You can also share resources and support through my Substack community at Trauma Training Transformation. You can also find me on social media. Come and join us and join the conversation. It's good to talk and keep moving. And if you are struggling, just remember, recovery is possible one step, one rep at a time. You've been listening to Trauma, Training and Transformation. I'm James Alder, and thank you for joining me today. Until next time, healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in the movement, in the connection, and in your courage.